One sales mistake I see made over and over again is being unable to sell to the partner on a call. Every piece of sales collateral out there says that we need to have the partner on the call, yet when we have them there, it's usually handled very poorly with very little to show for it. It usually ends up with, okay, we're going to go away and discuss this, or we need to actually figure out what's actually going on here. And it doesn't even have to be romantic partners or life partners. It can be business partners and advisors as well. And what you'll find is typically as you get up higher in the ticket prices, in the value of the things that you sell, there will usually be more than one person involved. Because most salespeople, they do one of two things. They either focus solely on one of them, the perceived decision maker, or they try to divide and conquer. Two on one, they'll gang up on the perceived handbrake. But do you notice in both of those options, I said perceived? Because there are dynamics at play that can be very difficult to figure out. And selling to a couple is not the same as selling to an individual. Because both people involved, they could have two totally different ideas of what success, of what a 10 out of 10 scenario on the back of working with you would look like. But they almost always have a different perspective on what's actually happening right now. And you, as the salesperson, you're asking them questions, you're unpacking what's going on. You might have been the first person that sits with them and actually helps them unpack what's actually at play. And that adds another layer of complexity because they will be talking and oftentimes disagreeing with one another about what the problem is at the moment, what they're actually trying to fix. If we skip forward to actually making a decision, both partners also need to feel consulted. They need to feel important and they need to feel like they were actually part of the process. They definitely both have to agree that it's a good idea. So how do you do that? A lot of sales literature out there says just focus on the decision maker, which historically it was the male, but times have really changed. They are partners and they need to be treated accordingly. And what I mean by that is if you are on a sales call and some salesperson, no matter who they are, they tried to at least make your partner feel like less, make you feel as though they're bossy or you don't need their permission. You're going to get one of two reactions. I mean, I know I would as well. Reaction number one would be, I don't need her permission, but that's how we operate. Or the second option, what was probably a little bit more likely, is if someone tried to demean that connection in the relationship or demean my partner, and this is what you see with most people as well, even if they don't say it. You don't know me like that. Don't go there. I'm going to do what I need to do. And then you've created unnecessary friction. So with both partners on the call at the beginning, acknowledge them both. Thank them for coming along. Ask each person how they are, whatever your intro process is. They both have to be acknowledged and consulted at the start of the call. And when you're unpacking what the current problem is, one person will always speak first and one person will always speak more. Unpack what they say, ask them questions, but always, and I mean always, ask the other partner's understanding of the problem. And the transition is really easy. So, look, thanks for sharing all of that, Tammy. But just quickly, Timmy, what else can you add to that? And did you notice in that question, I said, what else can you add? As opposed to how do you see it? Because the end goal, we want to collaborate and unite. We want them to add their perspective on top of the existing one, as opposed to having them realize that perhaps they viewed things very differently. And it's a way to actually make them collaborate instead of argue. And if they get interrupted by the other person, because remember, a lot of the time, one person is going to want to do a lot of the talking. You circle back and you keep circling back until you get the full side of their story. Again, if they don't feel consulted, if they don't feel part of it, they're going to be the ones saying, hey, we need to hop off this call and have a little bit of a conversation. The goal is to find the commonalities and then find some of the differences, but we unpack each of them, because anything that's left off, if they're not feeling as though they're on the same page regarding what the problem is, how do we actually work together, and how are we supposed to work together to actually fix a problem that's still ambiguous, that we still don't properly understand or properly I can use my words, agree on. They'll have to discuss further and let us know. Once there is clarity on what the actual problem is, what we're trying to fix, that's when we're going to go on their version of success. And again, ask them both in detail what it looks like in their eyes, what they're hoping to achieve. Common start point means that we can have a common path towards a common end point. And if everyone's on the same page, it's so much easier to actually move them forward. And I have another newsletter, which means I'll do another video on unpacking their version of heaven. That's going to be a separate one. But there has to be agreement on what they actually want. Because if there's no common problem and if there's no common success, it's going to be, we need to talk about this and get back to you. So by this point, we've clarified all of that. Everyone's on the same page. If we're not on the same page, we sit there and we unpack it until we are. And then it comes to the decision. And the number one mistake I see salespeople make at this point is 2-on-1. It cannot be 2-on-1. If someone is uncomfortable, remove the pressure, unpack their apprehensions, and leave plenty of room for them to communicate. Again, if we're not aligned, if we're not on the same page, it is only a matter of time until, even if they do get pressured into it on that call, it's only a matter of time until they're going to refund. And as an example, I was selling a business coaching solution to a couple earlier in this year. I think it was January, based on the context of the story. It was her business, and he came in from, I believe, accounting or whatever it was, and he was trying to get business coaching to push things forward. Now, we were sitting there, and he was front and center, talk, and she was sitting about a meter behind him. And one thing that I do on these calls is, if you see one partner sitting back, I could even tell by the body language. She's sitting back like this. She's not that bought in. And I asked her a couple of questions, as I always do. I need to get her into the conversation, but she was kind of sitting back. And the one thing that I do is I just say, hey, you're able to move a little bit closer to the computer. I can't hear you. The microphone, I think it thinks you're background noise. And there's a little bit of a laugh. They move forward. She leans in, instantly much more engaged in the conversation. And the whole way, he's shooting for the stars, and she has more experience in the business and is a little bit more apprehensive. So every time he would talk, acknowledge, clarify, and then I would loop her in. But what happened towards the end of the call in particular? It was decision time. There was no reason that they felt as though it wouldn't work. She was happy. You could see she was looking forward to it. But then she said, "Oh, I think we need to talk about this." And on the Zoom call, he looks directly sideways at her and just says in a really nasty tone, "You said you would be more decisive this year." And you could see all of these barriers. Now, most salespeople would jump on that. I removed all of the pressure, and it was, what's the apprehension? What's got you feeling as though, and look, as we say on the call, no is an acceptable outcome of this call. You can say no if you want to, but let's actually unpack that. So with all of that pressure gone, she was able to articulate some of the really bad coaches she's had in the past, how they made her feel, the kind of impact they had on the business. Now, if we got off the call and they had to talk about that, that would have been an emotional argument between them. But because I was able to remove that pressure, the whole way through the call, she had felt consulted, important, part of the decision, part of the solution, and also, to a certain extent, part of the problem. We could have that conversation. If I had have done the 2-on-1 approach, without a doubt, there would have been a cancellation. I have no doubt. But they did sign up. They came on board. They were unbelievably happy that they did it because we were clear on everything. If If you can take one thing from this call, consult both partners, meet them where they are, give them each enough space to unpack their version of success, their version of the problem, and get them to both buy in. And when you're doing your pitch or your delivery or whatever you want to call it, make sure that you're weaving in things that partner one said and then partner two said. You will have much, much different calls. Hope this was helpful, and good luck implementing.